Okay, Michael, we are live.
I'm amazed to see you back in Bangkok. Anyway, hi, my name is Michael Waits, and welcome back to E-Commerce Undercover. Martin, it's good to see you.
It's awesome to be here, Michael. I'm super happy to be finally back in Bangkok and that we can record again for e-commerce undercover.
Yeah, you know, we spent all that time joking about people taking all of December off, and then it was December, it was January, and even parts of February.
Exactly. Yes. You know what? That's what happens when people are working very hard. You know, you don't see them much because they are very busy. That's why, Michael.
I was working very hard. I don't
why
remember
you-
taking any time off.
That's
by the
why
way.
you did not see me much for 2 months.
I feel like there was a lot of champagne consumed and a lot of foie gras.
And
You were in
yeah,
France, yeah?
part of that, yeah, definitely.
that.
Part of that.
I don't think it was just part of it. I think it was all of it. Anyway, let's welcome Leonard Cheong, the founder, designer, and CEO at Finix, and a guy with a killer background,
Definitely.
a killer T-shirt,
Yeah.
and an unbelievable microphone. What do you think?
That's
like-
awesome.
How are you
I'm
doing,
like,
Leonard?
we're at karaoke right now, you know. You guys.
What's your favorite song?
My favorite song. Oh my gosh.
I mean, if we were going to do
Lady
karaoke
Gaga.
right now, I would leave. But
Well, Rain on Me, Tsunami.
Rain
Lady
on
Gaga.
fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, Leonard, why don't you give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of your background just so they can get some context before we jump into the main part of this conversation? I'm really curious about Finix, but before we get there, let's talk about you first a little bit.
So, hi everyone. My name is Leonard Cheong, and I'm founder and CEO of Finix. I'm also the creative mastermind behind Finix as well. So, where should I go back to? Well, I would say in my previous life, I wasn't really a fashion designer by training. I was in actually the PR marketing sphere, and I've been doing that for the past more than a decade actually. And
wow.
then over I would say the past 2 years ish that I somehow felt like I wanted to make a switch. I know maybe it's like a quarter life crisis, that's what they call it, right? Like we're getting to this certain age, thinking like if you don't change something about your life now, it's going to be harder to change, right? And
Yeah.
so I decided to I would say like a year or so to sort of brainstorm on what I wanted to sort of change my life, how I wanted to do certain things into my life, and and I sort of kind of looked at what was the common things that kept occurring in my life that I found a lot of joy in. So I kind of did a Marie Kondo on my life, if you want to say, right?
Marie Kondo. So you got rid of every little thing you didn't like and then simplified everything is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's a very Virgo nature of me because I'm a Virgo that I tend to, when things get a bit too complicated or cluttered in my life, I tend to start to purge, things that don't really
great
matter
idea.
anymore. And I started to sort of look at what are the common patterns in my life and really what brought me joy. And I think in that moment, it kind of occurred to me, or I saw the common traits were that fashion, was something that I really loved. Creativity was something that I really loved. And, I think at the point of time, I decided to just take the leap of faith. And I think also it was kind of serendipity because I had chanced upon a diploma for fashion, fashion
So
business and fashion business.
you went back to school and started studying, or was it just a course you took, or what did you re-enroll like in university?
It's not a university, it's actually a training center. So it was I would say like a 9-month course that
wow.
allowed me to sort of dip my feet into like the world of fashion design, what the supply chain is like, give an idea what a supply chain is like, but at the same time as well also help me understand the whole business around fashion as well. And I thought the amount of time was, I would say, is fair, good enough, for me to sort of equip myself with that knowledge, right? And it was a quite intense 9 months, I would say. But I think when I came out, I decided that I would start my business. But I felt like, I think why also I did fashion design was because I actually really had a certain aesthetic, a look that I wanted to create. And it came also stand from my experience being my lifestyle, I would say, being a yoga practitioner and currently now a yoga teacher. That I was trying to find like clothes or athleisure clothes or yoga wear that sort of fit my lifestyle, but also my style. But I realized that, you know, most of the mainstream brands out there were offering the kind of the same usual designs and looks. And I was like, why is this the case? You know, why is I can't seem to find what I wanted?
So I
Yeah.
feel like this is true kind of across the board, not just in fashion, but work with me on this for a second.
Yeah.
I feel like at the top of the funnel, there's all this creativity for a whole bunch of different products, right?
Yes.
But by the time you get to the bottom of the funnel, it gets out to the masses. It's just like polo shirts, jeans, and some kind of and t-shirts and some kind of combination of that, without any sort of differentiation or diversity. We can talk about fashion now, but
Yeah.
I think most people start a business, and Martin and I have found this across the board when we talk to startup founders and other types of business founders, that in a way they're solving a problem that they have kind of every day. And we say this a lot, right? It's like, where do you come up with your idea?
I have a problem myself.
I have a problem. And it's like, why doesn't somebody solve that problem?
Yeah.
And we always ask, why don't you solve it? But it sounds like that's what you're doing, no?
Yeah. So with the thing, I would say the problem opportunity that I saw, or the gap that I saw in the market, was that I realized when I was entering, like, you know, any like fashion store, right, that you will see like the men's department and then the women's department. But there's this whole gap in between that, based on my research, is probably a $3.2 billion industry of genderless styles that have not been realized. You see, and I think that's why you always say like, oh, you know, I always see the same jeans, the same polo shirt. It's because the designers these days, or the fashion industry, are designing for the cisgender archetype, the male and the female, right? So what do men wear? What do women wear? But they don't think about what's in between, and how can we cross-share or cross-pollinate designs that can cut across both genders. And I think that's where my brand comes in, and that's where my idea kind of stemmed from.
So why do you think it's such a big market, right? You said $3.2 billion. This is not small. And if it's that big, why nobody attacked this yet?
Well, I think it's because the infrastructure and the systems are still not aligned to allow the fashion industry to adopt that. I mean, there's a lot of, like, I say the fashion industry or the creative industry definitely is more liberal than other industries, right?
For
But
sure, yeah.
infrastructures and systems still hold the industry in place. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, for example, if you go into a or let's bring, for example, like recently I just sort of extended my collection into a physical space. There was a multi-brand store in Singapore called Design Orchard, and I asked them, like, they asked me, like, okay, where shall we put your clothes? I said, like, then they sort of saw my clothes and it's like, oh, you're menswear. And I'm like, well, my clothes are kind of like genderless, and they're more, I mean, they're kind of in between. Why do you put me in menswear? Because then women will not even buy my clothes, right? Because once you enter a store, the women will go to the women's section, the men will go to the men's section, right?
Well, they
So
won't
it
even,
was
yeah, I
kind
was
of
gonna
like,
say they won't even come into the department, right?
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, you won't even go into, like, for example, if let's say it was like second floor was a women's section, third floor was men's section, you will go directly to the men's section, right? You won't bother to go down to the women's section to check it out at all. And so there's this whole sea of designs in the women's section that you don't even know. And because by virtue of the fact, because they don't fit you, right? And that's understandable. But what if we created something like a line that was able to fit both men and women, you know? So I think that was also where I came from as well.
That's interesting. So did you put your clothes in both places, in men and women, or what happened?
So yeah, that's what happened, and I felt really uncomfortable about it. And because, like, I I would say, like, my personality. If people know me, people who know me well, they know that I'm quite bold in the terms of my dressing. And sometimes I'll just venture into the women's section and I'll see something that I like and I want to try it on. And I remember recently I did that, and I went to the women's section, and one of the staff came up to me and says, "Sorry, sir, that is." Actually, no. Actually, I asked her, "Do you have this in extra large or the largest size?" And she looked at me. It's like, "Sir, this is the women's section." Then I was like, "Oh, so I cannot buy anything from women's section?" "Well, you are a man." And then I was like, "Just get me the biggest size, right?" So she goes in,
It's not
picks it
that
out.
complicated.
Yeah. And then I was walking to the fitting room. And she said, "Sir, you need to go up to the fourth floor," which I was the second floor. "Go up to the fourth floor to change." I'm like, why? It's like, oh, this is the women's section, so no men are allowed in the fitting rooms. Then I'm like, oh shoot, okay, I didn't want to also like cause any like,
Yeah.
problem. So I had to go 2 floors up, change, and then I wanted to pay at the counter, and the guy said, "This is women's section. Please go on the second floor to pay." And I'm like, "What am I doing?" I'm like going up and
So,
down just to buy something.
so this is a really interesting opportunity then, both online and offline, right?
Yeah.
So you have a website. I can go to your website easily and buy. And if it's genderless or unisex, you can call it whatever you want. I can size it for myself online,
Yes.
right? Without a problem. And I want to get back and talk about this, learning about the supply chain, because I think this is really important, particularly when it comes to fashion, right? Because I think there's an interesting thing to learn about the supply chain. But more
Yes.
importantly, if you're running an online to offline business, right, which is definitely some kind of big trend in the e-commerce space,
Yes.
why not open your own physical space where everybody feels comfortable, where it is unisex and genderless, where the cash registers are the same, where everybody can try it on without having this sort of defensive move by the staff who's trained to do that in their own place. Like, this is a great idea, but why not implement it at scale so that nobody has to feel uncomfortable, right? In other words, there's cost associated with it for sure.
Yeah.
But you know that going from the second floor to the fourth floor is inefficient. The reason why e-commerce is even a thing is because it creates efficiency in the market, right?
Right. Right.
So if you, like, it would be neat, I think, super cool if there was just a store. And I mispronounced it at the beginning because I said Finix, but that's just because I can't read English properly. It's Phoenix, yeah?
It's Phoenix. Yes.
You should have told me the same way I mispronounced your name, right? You should have said, no, it's Phoenix. Please pay attention.
Well,
There will be a quiz at the end,
yeah, I'll test you at the end.
right? You can quiz me at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, that's why I talk about infrastructures and systems not being able to accommodate that, you see. And this doesn't just lie in just the department stores or,
No, not at
it
all. This is
also
why
lies
you have to have your,
within,
you should have your
sorry?
own physical space so you can show people, like, this is the way this should be done. Go ahead.
Yeah, but this happens also in the manufacturing industry as well. Like the sizes are all created, the patterns are all created for men and women,
Yeah.
So you're like, I want something genderless that can be worn across men and women. They're like, oh, we can't function. We are manufacturing, and it's like, it's like, it can change, right? Yeah, but they don't want to change. And they feel like, I don't see a need to change. And so it kind of just perpetuates itself. Back to your question about, why not have a physical space or I, for example, an e-commerce brand have a physical space.
Yep.
I think it depends on where you are in the world. I think
Yes,
at least
of course.
for me, I know where, for me, at least in Singapore, where I'm from, rental is very expensive.
It is expensive.
Yeah. So, and that is like cost every month that we have to fork out just for rental. And with like the last 2 years of COVID, imagine how it impacted a lot of fashion brands and businesses.
Yeah,
A
well,
lot
people
of them
wouldn't
had
go
to
to
close
stores.
down. Yeah, because people are not going to department stores. People are not going to the shopping centers anymore. I mean, it's picking up a little bit, but people have also over the last 2 years have been more accustomed to shopping online. So some of them are now going to the stores just to see maybe just see the item, and then they go online and they buy it because they realize because it is physical store, they charge even higher prices because of maybe taxes or maybe like, retail, rental, everything goes in, right? And so like, I think there's still a need for that omni-channel presence where basically are both online and offline because people appreciate being able to test and try the clothes. But I think it's a fine balance. I think people are still trying to figure that out, how much of a balance. And I think some of them are transforming their physical stores into more concept stores where basically people experience the brand there and then they buy it online. Yep.
Yeah, or they buy it there, but it gets shipped from a warehouse somewhere, right? So they try it on there. We've seen Pomelo try to do this, right? So David talked about this a lot. You brought up a really interesting point, right? So I try to think a lot about what Finix meant before I do these conversations and before I record. And one of the things that I did not consider was sizing. Well, actually, the manufacturing of the sizes, right? So when you call a factory, I'm presuming you did your robot voice to say that they just proceed the way. No, but it made a point, though, right? That they just proceed the way they've always proceeded. And the idea here is that if you call a factory and say, I want it to be, I'm just making up numbers, right? 7 measurements this way and 6 measurements that way. And then I want you to put a tag on it that says like medium. They're like, well, that's not a medium, right? Because ideally you want to, if it's genderless, you want to have sizes that fit gals and guys, right? But that's not women small, but it's just like, here's the size it is. Does it fit your body? Kind of thing. But I hadn't considered the fact that the manufacturers wouldn't do that.
Yeah. So
Yes.
how do you handle that? That's
Yeah.
a very big question I have.
Yeah, this is a huge question. So how do you disintermediate that? How do you manage that?
Um, I would say this is also, I mean, if I could just go back to the industry itself, I think that this is also is a big thing that the industry, the fashion industry at least, is trying to figure out. I think the fashion industry does see that genderless is the future of fashion, is moving in that direction. But one thing they feel that they have not grasped is the sizing issue, and that's been I would say a perennial issue within the fashion industry. Anytime, even if even in the current situation between men and women's wear as well, it's like they're different sizes. We're all we're all human beings with different sizes, different proportions, and no brand has really managed to capture all that. So with the genderless, at least with my brand, at least, as I said, I am a genderless athleisure label. But I think what is unique about my brand, what characterizes my genderless style, is that my clothes tend to be more looser. I would say looser, more fluid, more relaxed feel. So you can see what I'm wearing right now.
Yep.
For those who can't see, I'm actually wearing a noragi or sort of kimono jacket, which has a more voluminous, fluid kind of style or silhouette. And I think men and women can just sort of sit in it and feel like, oh, it's like a bathrobe or something, or like a robe that can just throw on, and like.
So in Japan, by the way, men and women both wear that, right?
Exactly.
So noragi is actually a Japanese word. Gi, which is the shortened version of the conjugation for kiru, means to wear.
To wear, yes.
Yeah, so kimono means ki, mono means clothing. It just means stuff you wear. That's all kimono means, right?
Yes,
Kiru.
exactly. Yeah. So noragi is actually no is actually like the word for farming. So in a long time ago, the noragi jacket was created for the farmers, the people in the field, and it was something like, because it was looser, more easy to move.
It was easier to move your body around. It wasn't so tight, right? So noragi was, no means nogyo, which means agriculture. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so I brought that design in to sort of create this very relaxed, very movement-friendly attire that people could wear to the yoga studio, or maybe they're on a trip to Bali for a massage, for a yoga retreat, for example. It was something along those lines of this really relaxed kind of lifestyle that I wanted to create. And as I said, going back to the topic on sizing, I think my clothes are characterized by a more looser, oversized, I would say, and flowy silhouette, which I think both men and women can fit into it. But I think when I move into other designs, like more body hugging ones, like maybe leggings and stuff like that, then these are the things that I think would be quite challenging in terms of, because men and women are anatomically different.
Just different leg sizes, different waist sizes, different buttock sizes, right? The whole thing is just different. But that's a sizing issue more than a design issue, yeah?
Yeah, so I think this is something that, the industry is trying to really grapple with right now. Like, what does genderless mean, and how much is the market worth? Is it worth even investing in a more broad range of sizing and stuff like that? So I would say
what's been your experience? So when did you launch your first collection for Finix? I'm curious what the divide is between online sales, offline sales, online marketing, offline marketing, stuff like that. Like, when did you launch and how's it going?
So I launched my brand in, I would say I started my business 2 years ago, but I started at the height of COVID, and it was in January 2020 when I did it. And it was
Good timing, by the way.
I know, right? And it was just, it was a very challenging year. So a lot of things were not moving at that point in time. Also, like logistics, fulfillment, everything was all ran to a grinding halt. And I remember that year was really, I always call it a year of everything but nothing.
Right.
Nothing moved. You just kept talking and talking, but nothing really moved, right? And then finally, I think only later in that year, when people sort of got the hang of what COVID, what social distancing was and everything, then things started moving. And so I actually officially started my brand. I launched my brand, my website in December of 2021. 2020. So technically, I've only been in business, I would say, for about a year plus. Yeah.
But when did you launch your first line? Like when did you actually have clothing that people could go online and buy?
So yeah, in December of 2020, that's when I started selling my clothes, and it was just some t-shirts and tank tops that were made in a eco-sustainable bamboo fabric, and it was sort of like a with prints and yoga inspired prints, and that was my pre-launch collection. And then subsequently, also concurrently, I was pushing out the first part of my main collection, which is one of these tops that I'm wearing, which is actually a seamless cap sleeve top t-shirt and a drop armhole tank top. And this was made in a also another sustainable fabric called Odell, ice cotton. And it was launched in February of 2021. So yeah, this is the sort of the timeline. And just recently in end of January, I launched my next collection, my new collection now called the Freedom Collection, which is the Noragi jacket I'm wearing right now, and a bunch of others. You can check out my website. And this is the third collection that I pushed out so far.
And how are sales going? How do people discover you? Like, what is the e-commerce side of this where people can figure out, or how do you expect people to figure out how to find the brand? And the reason I ask is because, just so you know, Martin and I in this show have had a lot of people that build software for e-commerce, that do marketing for e-commerce, that PR for e-commerce, or that build websites for e-commerce, but not a lot of people that are doing e-commerce. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you. It's like everybody's building tools and nobody wants to do anything. So I wanted to talk to somebody who's doing something.
Doing anything.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Right?
Building tools is so simple for e-commerce.
No, it's not. Of course it's not. I'm simplifying. But we want somebody that was doing e-commerce, right? So just run us through the process. You've done a few different lines. Freedom feels like it's your biggest attempt at having like a full-fledged line for Finix.
Yes.
What have you learned along the way about e-commerce, and like how do people discover you? Talk about the whole e-commerce side of it so I can learn something.
So I would say the whole of last year I was a purely e-commerce business, right? And I mean, being an e-commerce business comes with its challenges because you're taking away the touch and feel of the tactile experience of fashion,
Right.
And so everything has to be, I would say, described online as much as possible, as much detail as possible. So me being from the public relations sector, communication sector, that worked well for me because I really was very big on the writing, the copywriting, making sure that when I describe my clothes, that I explain what it felt like. So if you go into my website, you would see like I me describing the fabrics, like, oh, it's soft, it's luxurious, it's smooth like butter, and it's like it's cool on the skin, it's great for tropical weather and stuff like that. So that was as far as I can go. And another thing is also sizing as well. Like I also had to make sure that like my sizing chart was accurate, that people could look at my sizing chart and make a decision there and then, like, oh, I'm a small, I'm a medium, I'm an extra large, for example. So we play a lot of things with like height as well. So describing the for example, like the model's height in my product page. Oh, model is 1.75 meters tall, wearing a size M. So people who are that height can sort of say, okay, I'm 1.76, so I guess I'm a medium as well. So they immediately can make that decision. So you're really trying to sort of describe in as much as a detail as possible to the customer, such that they can make that decision online.
Interesting.
Yeah. But at the same time as well, like I was also, as being an early startup as well, an early brand, I also was open to meeting some of these customers as well. So some of them wrote into me and say, hey, could we meet? And like, let me try the clothes. And some of them I did in the beginning, I did meet them face to face, like maybe in a public area, and just like, here are the stuff, try it. Very, very, get my hands dirty on
funny.
the road, on the ground, you know. So that's why, like, being an e-commerce business is also not a solution in itself. You still need to think about the customers. The customers are human beings, and human beings are definitely touchy-feely kind of people, right? So I think it was a kind of trying to balance that out. I would say that marketing-wise, it was a lot to do with visuals. So definitely your photography must be great, your content must be great, and now with like, video, like TikTok, for example, videos are so important. So you're constantly having to really think about what is the next interesting content I can create? What is the next interesting media format I should create? So there's a lot of think about. I feel like as an e-commerce business or as a business owner in general, majority of the time I feel like you will be thinking about marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think about live commerce as well? In other words, having your own show where you're just constantly talking about, because we did a whole show or maybe 2 shows
On live commerce.
on live commerce.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? Because I see you have the TikTok. I'm pointing behind me, but I'm really trying to point behind you, which is the other way. But you have the TikTok logo back there and the Instagram logo too, which means you could do Instagram Live or you could do TikTok. I'm just curious if you think about doing live commerce where you can actually show people, wearing it, how tall they are, compare it to somebody else's size and stuff like that.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Do you think about it?
Yeah.
Or?
Of course. I think in actually like early last year, I won't say I did in a live commerce kind of format. I think live commerce sounds like, those kind of, what is those kind of like television kind of thing where someone like,
Ooh, television
like,
sounds
now
terrible.
at 9:90, call now.
Yeah, no.
It was like,
No. No, I'm talking about much more sophisticated programming where nobody wants to have television like this. Nobody. And I would say QVC or whatever brand you understand that does this, that's the old way of doing it. Like only 4 more left, $4.99 just for you. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
But if you're creating content and you're in charge of your own content creation, which I think is great, just like you're doing your own copywriting, then you can control this entire experience of your brand, right? And if it's
Absolutely.
live, you may be able to connect. Remember, your customers wanted to meet you face to face. But now this feels as pretty close to face, and the technology is going to get better. Do you consider doing stuff like this where you can actually show off the thing, touch it while you're explaining about it, kind of thing? I don't know.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of these things pop up over at least the past 2 years since COVID, landed on us. I did try it as well. I think it really depends on your branding, where you want to go with it. It also depends on the kind of clothes you are kind of producing. For example, I think these kind of live commerce thing works well with fast fashion, works well with I would say fast moving goods.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because
FMG.
FMCG, it's quick, right? It's like, I've seen some of them before, and they're like, they have like maybe like women's wear, for example, right? I've seen some of them. Basically, they get maybe a few girls on camera, and they say, oh, we try this, all the different styles, and it's very simple. It's like, dresses, very basic skirts and dresses and everything, and it's very easy, and I think it's also the customer as well. It's like, I think women tend to be bigger buyers. Yeah, and they are more like easy to convince, I guess, and they're willing to take the risk. I don't know. I feel that. But I think also it really, as I say, goes with the branding as well. So you need to think about like, what are you as a brand? Are you a fast fashion brand? What do you want to portray to the customer, right? And for me, like, I know sort of where I want my brand to be. And so I think this kind of way of selling, it's not really my focus, but I think it's a way for me to also share with my customers like what it looks like. So I'll probably do like maybe 1 or 2 live commerce where basically I show them like how it looks like, but I'm not actively selling it. I'm not like, go on my website and buy it now, but I'm just saying that, hey, it's really comfortable. It's made in this fabric.
Yeah.
It's more informational rather than
Absolutely.
selling. Yeah. If that makes sense.
That's a very interesting point of view about live commerce.
But live commerce, because everybody else is talking about how live commerce is the new thing. And
and as a way to sell, actually, right? And
Right.
like they want to do an event, they want to do that, like only Tuesday night, 8 p.m., and they're gonna do like a big promotion, only 10 left, this kind of stuff that we see everywhere, right? But you're right. Like, I think I think your point of view is really good. Like this is maybe not the way that all the brands want to be portrayed and want to communicate with our customers. So maybe you can find maybe like an in between like strengthening the relationship with your customers, showing in real what it looks like, not being so salesy and being marketing too much. And I completely get your point. And I think that's very interesting.
I think it'd be neat to do like my customer's experience with my product, whether it's fashion or not. But fashion, it works really well, right? You know, like hey, take a picture. If you're wearing this Noragi, take a picture of yourself out and about. Send it in, and if it looks great, we'll post it, and then use that as a as like the thumbnail for sales. I don't know. There are a bunch of different things that are fun to do.
Just randomly call customers when you are live.
When you're live. Are you wearing it?
Just randomly video call to customers live.
Where do you manufacture your stuff, and what are the challenges around manufacturing, particularly during COVID, where you couldn't necessarily go to the factory, right? In the old days, you'd get on a plane, I'm guessing, and go to a factory somewhere and then work with them and, go through the fabrics with them, look at all this kind of stuff. Where do you manufacture? What was the challenge during COVID to actually set this up?
So I mentioned to you, I started at the height of COVID, and that was also where I started my sourcing for my manufacturer as well. So prior to COVID, prior to all the lockdowns, I had made plans to actually found a sort of potential manufacturer in Indonesia. And I came back to Singapore. I was hoping to plan another trip to Indonesia, and that plan fell through when, COVID started getting more serious. And I think my government in Singapore at least were warning us not to travel because they're going to close the borders. So I had to cancel that trip. But I tried to sort of communicate with the factory or over like a WhatsApp call or maybe through Zoom. But I think without that physical interaction, that face-to-face interaction, it was beginning to look very, at least come off to me as very challenging, because it was at first a language barrier thing. I think they found it very challenging to describe to me what they were trying to do. At the same time as well, like there was no relationship established then as well. So it was very, I just felt there were a lot of moving parts that I was not very sure or confident that it would go through. And then so that way fell through. And then I decided, and really, I would just say like during the whole period on COVID, I had to really be creative and pivot a lot. So I actually turned my eyes to China, and I said, okay, that's where the manufacturing hub of the world is, right? For clothes. And so I went on one of those freelance websites like Fiverr and Upwork and managed to find someone who was in the city that I was trying to find manufacturers in Shenzhen, in China. And she was basically a middleman, like an agent, where she would like be the person who does the checks and also visits the factories for you and sort of be the middle person to talk between the factory and you, right? And so I employed her for a while as a freelancer, and she did all the bidding for me. That also posed a lot of challenges. She was spontaneous. She definitely tried her best, but I think the factory in China was not prepared to do everything over a Zoom call, So it was like, I think after my first sample I did with them, they said, no, we're just going to do a second sample. We don't want to do it anymore because this is too crazy for us.
So they turned down your business, yeah?
Yeah, so they turned down my business, and she said like, oh, I'd look for another manufacturer for you. And at that point of time, I was kind of like, this is not working. I need someone who is based in Singapore who is maybe able to help me. And so I decided to then consolidate and bring my entire look for a place or at least an agent closer to home. And so I decided to do a lot of research, and I found I would say like this kind of garment agents in Singapore. There were a few. I even found a small little factory in Singapore, like a small little clothing factory in Singapore that had a small sewing line, which I was able to sort of produce my first line of clothes. But at the same time as well, I also found another agent that had connections to China. So her family she's Singaporean. Her family used to be based in China and used to run a factory there, but they've seen also consolidated as well and came back to Singapore. And so she was like saying that she's very close ties to China and she can help me sort of be that middle person, but I could communicate with her in Singapore. So that really worked well for me. And I think that was how I sort of started manufacturing through her into China. Yeah.
So you're now manufacturing in China through the same factory?
Yes, correct. Not the same factory, a factory that she used to run.
Right. And how do you handle the logistics on your side? So and I'm not talking about from China to Singapore, but once you get to Singapore, do you just use traditional 3PLs? Like what kind of delivery do you use? What is the process for buying, building, and then delivering?
So it's a lot of it is actually, it's actually because I work with this agent, so she basically helps to sort all that out. I think in China the fulfillment system there is a little more complicated, I would say, because it's such a big country. But with her ties with that factory, they have an arrangement where they have their own delivery service and they actually have connections with the import exports port in China. So they definitely were able to sort of then ship back and forth from Singapore to China. I think that helped expedite a lot of process like sampling and also production as well. So I mean, at the end of the day, they couldn't do it by air freight because there are not a lot of flights flying right now. So a lot of it went by ship. Yeah. So it took about maybe 2 weeks at least from China to Singapore, but at least it's not like a 1 month thing, So I think it worked out. Yeah.
Actually, like I'm trying to think about it. You are trying to launch a new kind of clothing in the middle of at the beginning of the pandemic in another country, where in this country they must be super busy because like everybody starts shopping online and all of those brands that they manufacture like needs more supply. And you come and you say, hey guys, I'm in Singapore and I want to do something completely new. So you have to change all your size charts. You have to change everything you do, all your process and everything. We're going to do something completely new. Yeah, I guess it must be very hard. I guess it must be like completely like, if I was a factory at this moment, I completely understand that we can tell you, okay, let's see what later.
Yeah.
This is not for now for us. We are too busy. It's new. It's crazy idea. You're not here. I guess this must be very hard, but actually like you did not give up and you find solution around yourself. And I think this is very, very interesting.
Yeah, so this gets back to what we always talk about with startups, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's no glamour in this. I mean, it's fashion, so it's some kind of glamour.
And it's beautiful.
But it's more just like digging deep and like
solutions.
breaking stones and finding solutions every day.
Because I'm pretty sure that tons of entrepreneurs
would definitely give up with this. You kidding me?
Actually, I'm sure that there's tons of entrepreneurs who try to launch a fashion brand at the same time as you.
And just said, never mind.
Because of all the problems, then they just gave up, or they just said, like, we're going to do that later, or after the pandemic, or when things are going to be easier, right? But you did not. And this is what gave you an edge, because right now, like, you are ready, you have all of the things, like you have your website, you have the product, you have everything. So when the pandemic is going to be over and people are going to go back to a normal life, you're there. And that's amazing, I think. And this is making me thinking, like, is there other brands who are also targeting like genderless people, or are you kind of alone into this market?
Sorry, I didn't catch your question.
Sorry, like, is there other brands, other companies who are creating clothes the same way as you do, or are you like kind of alone doing that?
No, I think that definitely there are other brands out there that have a genderless approach to their clothes. Okay. But so far, because I also kind of also research my competition as well. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you need to know who your competition are. So based on my research, I would say that most of these brands are actually all emerging in the Western markets. I would say mostly in the United States, and there's still a handful only, but it's growing. I mean, you see even the big luxury brands, like especially Gucci is very, 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 very big on this genderless style. You see their campaigns and everything, and you see it. They're very, very, they're going this genderless route. But in terms of the non-luxury brands, I would say there are quite a few emerging, and because I think it's because it's due to like the whole shift in the cultural shift that we are seeing in our society, where there is a lot of conversations and talks about gender inclusivity, gender equality between men and women. And then you see as more women become finally getting and becoming a stage where, or we are at a stage, or in probably the United States at least, where women are equal to men. And when that happens as well, there is it somehow or other that inevitably has a conversation about what women can wear in the office and what men can also should wear in the society as well. So you're starting to see an emergence of a certain equalization of the genders, and also what happens with that comes also with clothes and fashion, because that's what is the most immediate thing people go to in terms of expressing themselves, right?
Yeah.
People talk about authenticity and everything. Yeah.
I like to think that you can't become something that you can't see. Do you feel in a way like a role model for other entrepreneurs, but for just other people that maybe want to have a different way to dress, but don't have an outlet for doing that?
I haven't thought myself as really a role model, but maybe hopefully a trailblazer in this area.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are still very entrenched within the binary, where I think it's just easier for them to um, just wear what society tells them to wear, because why make a hoo-ha about it, right? And like I don't want to I want to blend in rather than stand out, and this idea also, because of that, and also about the industry as well as it being very entrenched in the binary, is that like what happens is that because people don't want to experiment, so what happens is that people don't know what they don't know, if that makes sense. So let's say we don't
That was my
create,
point. Is that they
yeah,
can't. Like
they can't see
I
it
can't walk
because,
into a store. Someone can't walk into a store and say, "Where's the genderless department?" until they feel like that's an option.
right. And so that's why, like I say, I think more trailblazers, because I hope to be able to start, creating these styles so that people start knowing what they didn't know, because I think that was the challenge as well that I also got from some of my peers and also people in the industry. They're like, why do you think that people want genderless clothes? I mean, can the status quo just, satisfy them? I said, well, it can, but they don't know what they don't know until they see it, right? So when they heard it, they were like, that is kind of true. We need to create it in order to know that it can work, and that's with any innovation. You don't have to be genderless style, it can be any innovation. Before we created, for example, the Discman, people didn't even know that music can be played on a disc, right? Until they created a Discman. So same as fashion as well. I think it's still very entrenched in the binary, but I think as we see brands like example like mine, maybe like a luxury brand like Gucci, for example, they start to merge or cross-pollinate the designs between men and women's wear. I think people would start to see more interesting designs come out of that, not just in luxury, but also in everyday active wear. Yeah.
So it leads me to one thought, and I'm not sure I'm gonna use the right word for that, but let's try. I'm really wondering, like, who are your target customers? Are you trying to target people who are already feeling genderless and they don't have, clothing that suits them, and so they're looking for a solution? Like either people who know that or people who don't know that, but they feel something that they don't really know? Or are you trying to target even, like, I don't know, like this is where I don't really know how to express that, but are you trying to target everybody and
Or just
showing
existing
them,
mainstream buyers that can
Yeah.
then buy genderless clothing if it just makes them feel more comfortable, right? Because there's a bunch of different markets there to attack. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is very interesting, because like even though like I position my brand as an inclusive brand, but then if you dig deeper, it is actually exclusive to be inclusive, if that makes sense. It's because
Exactly, yeah.
it's because what we deem as like what's available in the market is for already a certain group of people already,
Yep.
men, women, that's it. Then there's this whole in between that I think the industry has forgotten, you know. And so how do I put it? Like it's sort of I think it's more of, again, back to the thing about you don't know what you don't see, right? And the thing is that like with it's because of there's this lack of diversity of looks and representation within the fashion industry. If you can't see your humanity represented in some human being, I think it's very hard to visualize yourself in those shoes. So, for example, a plus size person, if he or she does, or she or they do not see themselves in fitness and wellness practices or in campaigns, they will like think maybe the fitness industry is not for me. Maybe the fashion industry is not for me, right? For example, like if Obama didn't become the first Black president of the United States, would many young Black children around the world ever aspire to be the president of the United States? Right? So this idea of representation needs to emerge. And I think is that representation is so important because it shows the diversity of people in the world. That we're not just in the binary, we are a whole spectrum of very diverse looking, acting, behaving people. You know, and I think that's where my brand comes in. You know, and the thing is that I don't think people in the binary can see that right now, but people maybe beyond that who are more progressive, maybe we'll see it. Yeah.
That's a great way to end this conversation, Leonard. I really appreciate your time. Leonard Cheong, the founder, designer, and CEO, I'll get it right this time, of Finix Wear. Cheong, thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, both of y'all.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.